Hey there, listeners. Welcome to Hines on Air, your weekly dose of inspiration, motivation, and real-life entrepreneurial stories. I'm Matt Hines, your host, and I'm excited to have you join me on this journey. From building a successful law firm to venturing into other industries like real estate and social media, I've experienced both the triumphs and the challenges that come with entrepreneurship. I've learned firsthand the importance of resilience, adaptability, and a relentless pursuit of excellence. On Hines on Air, we're diving deep into the world of business, law, and personal growth. Join me as I chat with incredible guests who have faced adversity, defied expectations, and achieved extraordinary success. We'll discuss their strategies, their mindset, and the lessons they've learned along the way. Whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur, a seasoned business owner, or simply someone looking for a little inspiration, Hines on Air is for you. Remember to subscribe, like, and leave a review whenever you listen to podcasts. Your support helps us reach more people and continue sharing these incredible stories. Let's get started. Hello, everybody. Matt Hines. We are back with another Hines on Air. We have a special presentation for you today. It's very exciting because I've got two great friends of mine, lots of criminal defense experience. We have on my right, Mr. Frederick B. Man. We've been practicing together for a while now. Frederick has 48 years of criminal defense experience. 48. So he's done it on the state's side. He's done it on the defendant's side. He's done it at the federal level, the state level. He's seen it from all angles. So lots of knowledge, just great experience bringing to the table. On my left, we have Mr. Larry Korn, also with 38 years experience, criminal defense. Have you done it on the state side as well?
Nope.
You've always fought the good fight.
Exactly.
Okay. All right, good. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming here.
My pleasure.
I wanted to get y'all's opinion on this because this story's been talked about a lot on a lot of different podcasts and a lot of different news articles and all, but it's still fascinating to me. So we're here today about Luigi Mangione. And on December 4th, 2024, he shot Brian Thompson, who's the CEO of United Healthcare. Right now, it's been announced that attorney Pam Bondi is seeking the death penalty. Larry, you say the trial won't happen before maybe another 2 or 3 months?
If not longer.
Longer?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I think everybody is sort of on standby, waiting to see what happens here. The interesting thing is, from what the facts suggest, he's likely the murderer. I hate to say that and judge him guilty before the jury gets it, but the facts are against him, I think, right now. When they pulled him over, he had a gun. He had his manifesto where he described what his thoughts were about the whole insurance industry and all. Isn't that correct? And now they found him in a McDonald's. They've arrested him. There's been no confession as far as I know. Have you ever heard of any confession? No. But what's fascinated me is the public's response. This guy's raised about $1 million on GoFundMe for his insurance, for his attorney fees. So the public's behind him. And the question is, will that sort of fervor bleed into a jury? I don't know if a jury member can actually go in there and feel what he did was justified and right. And maybe are there any legal defenses? So what's going to happen in this case? So I wanted some of the best to come and discuss this and kind of flesh it out, and we'll see where it takes us. So anyway, let's start. Fritz, are you familiar with the evidence in this case at all?
I would say I've kept up on it, yes.
Do you think there's any way he's found not guilty?
My honest opinion is that the first approach, I think most defense attorneys would have looked at would have been not guilty by reason of insanity. And the reason for that is obvious. If somebody commits a homicide in public, is caught with a manifesto of some kind, listing or a screed, some type of a written proclamation about all the injustices they see in the world, and they feel that killing a CEO who happens to be a CEO for a large insurance company is somehow redressing those injustices. That is somebody who is not thinking clearly, obviously, okay? And then the question becomes, did they meet the definitional tests for legal insanity? But the problem is that the prosecution is obviously going to come back on any kind of a defense like that and say, yeah, but look at all the planning and preparation that went into it. If the gun was actually made by the defendant from a kit or from pieces, cut out and assembled, and he was still carrying the gun All that the manifesto is really a revelation of his motivation. Okay, and motivation is never necessary for a conviction, and may not be relevant unless there is an issue of legal sanity. I don't know that anybody's going forward with that defense, but that would have been my first reaction. Without the insanity defense, then it becomes a question of, well, is this a hit? Is this a hit just like anybody else would want to assassinate somebody for whatever reason, because they're a symbol of something that they're fighting against? Okay. So it's an interesting case. It's to me kind of bizarre that he's become a cause celeb.
He has, man.
For a lot of people that have been probably abused by the insurance industries, denials of treatment, people in nursing homes, people who needed necessary surgery, people that died because they didn't get the proper treatment. So there's a lot of built up animosity, but as far as being in front of jurors and actually being acquitted, I think that's a bit of a stretch right now. And personally, I would have really wanted to explore the insanity defense, because insanity doesn't require that a person be raving and, talking to, a moth in the corner or something. Okay. It doesn't require that degree of psychosis. Okay. It can be something like Captain Queeg in the Caine Mutiny, somebody who's, moving steel balls in their hands all the time and keeps using the same expressions over and over again and just not acting right.
That could rise to the level where a judge could say
Something
doesn't understand what he did.
well, something is off. Okay. That they, the test in Georgia, of course, is, did they know the difference between right and wrong? And did they perhaps act from a delusional compulsion? Okay. That's a funny term, because every lawyer I know wants to get it confused and say compulsional delusion. Okay. But it's delusional compulsion is the other prong.
Can it be temporary?
Technically, yes, in the sense that you can be restored to not only competency, but sanity, certainly at the time of trial through medication. If a person is pumped up on what they call psychotropic medications, which they give them in the jails, as soon as they deem them mentally ill and needing them, if they're psychotic. The irony is you can have somebody that is totally competent and probably sane as well at the time of their trial, but using a defense that at the time of the crime, they were legally insane.
Okay. Larry, you got a thought on this?
I do. I think they will eventually have to argue insanity, but I don't think that's what they're going to hang their hats on. I think the primary defense focuses to be on something called jury nullification, where the jury looks at the evidence and looks at young Luigi and decides, this guy had it coming.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's going to be what happens, but I think it's going to be what keeps the government from a conviction. That doesn't mean his acquittal. The jury could hang up, but getting 12 people to agree, much less sentence somebody to death on something like this, seems to me at least a little bit unlikely.
What doesn't a defense attorney argue to a jury when he wants to do jury nullification? So basically, that's when they just disregard the evidence. The evidence is obvious. He killed him, but it was for the greatest good, or something in their conscience says this was necessary.
Well,
that's jury nullification?
Yeah, something like that. Yes, that's pretty much exactly it. The difficulty in this case will be there's no way a judge is going to allow in the fact that this guy worked for United Healthcare or was the CEO of United Healthcare, and that they had been in a consistent plan or habit, whatever it was, to deny coverage across the board. No way that evidence of that is coming in, I don't think.
They won't use that to show his motive?
If the government is dumb enough to put that in, let it
be a mistake.
I think that would be a mistake. They don't need to prove motive. But what I do think could happen is that I think it's likely most jurors are going to know about it.
Right.
I don't think there's any way to avoid that. You could change venues, take it anywhere in the country. They're going to know.
What would a defense attorney say? Would he, because there's rules when a defense attorney is talking to the jury, right? Isn't he limited on what he can tell that jury. Like, he can't directly say, look, we understand he's guilty, but look, the world's a better place, guys. Let's vote not guilty because this is good. America's better. Like, but how do you present it?
It's a very fine line.
Yeah.
And it's difficult. It would take a really creative closing argument to put that in front of a jury. And I'm not sure exactly how they would do it, but I guarantee that's what they're going to be trying for. I can't think of any other way that's going to get their client out from under this. And I'm not sure what exactly they're going to say. I'm sure they're going to have to brainstorm over that for many months to figure out exactly how that's going to go.
Have y'all ever seen jury nullification happen to where it was obvious, but
I think in the modern era, if you want to call it that, to me, the classic case of jury nullification was the O.J. Simpson case, okay, because there was more than enough evidence to convict him. But I think given the composition of the jury in Los Angeles, the minority was the majority on the jury. I don't think he was acquitted simply because the gloves had shrunk with the passage of time and with blood congealing on, high quality Italian leather gloves. Okay. I think those would have probably not fit you or me. Okay. But I think that, that would be a case where, whether it was said out loud or it was kind of between the lines, that was a case where there was probably a lot of animus and a lot of feeling of, would this person be charged if he were white? I mean, it would be a different situation, okay? But I think that going back to the issue about jury nullification, the interesting thing about him having this screed or this manifesto on his person, as I understand it, on the one hand, the prosecutors may say, oh, this is great. This is something that shows he had motivation, he had a plan, he went through with his plan, he was meticulous, and so on and so forth. Actually, that may be the star piece of evidence for the defense. Because if there's anything in there that smacks of somebody being psychotic, they're off the deep end, a conspiracy theorist to the 99th degree, okay, that may be the pin that the defense wants to hang their hat on, okay, that, this is the reason that he's not guilty, because this is clear that this manifesto is the statement of a madman, okay? To me, that's, the actual words and the actual, even one word, depending on where it's placed, that could be the ending of the movie because it's the best piece of evidence for the state, but on the other hand, it's actually the best piece of evidence probably for the defense.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough because I've seen videos of him. I don't know, maybe it was high school, but it wasn't too far before this all happened. And he was given I think it was his high school graduation, and he's thanking the school and he's acknowledging this other student for overcoming obstacles in life and doing all great speech. So something major had to have happened between when he was in that sort of mind state and when he did this. I know he disappeared for 3 or 4, maybe up to 6 months. I don't know exactly, but he was gone. Nobody knew where he was. So maybe somebody got in his head during that time and made him tilt too far to the left or right. I don't know.
Let me ask Larry, didn't Ted Kaczynski have some kind of a screed that they found in his...
Absolutely.
Yeah, in his, little shanty out there in the woods in the Rockies, wherever it was that he was hiding. Imagine a guy being in a place that not much bigger than an outhouse, or I believe. Yeah, in the middle of the mountains, and he's writing furiously page after page about, corporate America and, the evils of, the industrial, military industrial complex or whatever it was that he was obsessed with.
It's interesting because that could be perceived genius. Because I'm sure, he was teaching at Harvard at like 12 or, I don't know, some ridiculously early age, right? So you could probably read those manuscripts and be like, God, this is a brilliant mind, or this mind's gone completely insane. I don't know. I've read books about him, but I haven't read the manuscripts he wrote.
Right, but But I think that whatever's in that writing is going to be a real key piece of evidence in the case.
Did it help Ted? Because
Not a bit.
No.
I didn't think so.
He's stirring multiple life sentences.
They went the genius route. They thought it would be, I guess, not insane. Yeah, this one, let me put you on the spot. If you want to pass, you can. Do you think there's any rightness to what he did?
I hate to use the word right, but I understand.
Sure.
Or put it that way. There's a Chris Rock comedy routine where he's talking about OJ. He says he was wrong, but I understand. It's like that. He can't walk up in a New York City street or any street in any city and just pop a guy in the crown just because you don't like his policies. We're not designed to work that way.
Right.
But I understand.
It's tough because I've asked friends of mine, let's say it's 1944, whatever. Hitler's walking down the street. He's not threatening you. He's not threatening anybody. So there's no immediate harm. But you see, he's Hitler. You know he's a bad guy, and you shoot and kill him. Was that the correct thing to do? And most people say yes. Okay, that was murder. So on a spectrum, murder was justified as the right thing to do, even though it violated the law. So I guess the question philosophically or whatever is, where would this fall on that spectrum? Maybe not far enough close to Hitler. I mean, there's a big difference between the insurance and Hitler, but they're evil. And we could say, well, use another health insurance company. You don't have to use them. Maybe, but I tell you, with an industry as powerful as insurance, they're going to control the laws. They're going to control the congressmen. They're going to control the government. So you're kind of stuck. So you either, I hate to say it, you got to deal with it or you got to do something. And I'm not suggesting that this was the thing to do, but I'm with you. I understand. And I understand everybody else's sympathy with him. So, I don't know. That's a toughie. Do you want to,
well, just on your analogy about Hitler, I think a lot of people would disagree that was not murder, that was execution. Okay. That, he had murdered millions of people and,
right.
Total innocence. And, the German military themselves tried to assassinate him. Okay. Unfortunately, they didn't succeed, but, I think there's a major difference there. Okay. And, here you have an individual who's a, corporate executive and, setting policies for an insurance company, and the insurance business is all about making money. Okay. But that's where the animosity comes from, is that people that have been directly affected, like I said, if you have a relative that couldn't get approval for particular treatment in a hospital or payment for an ALF or somebody with dementia, somebody who needs help and they're not getting it. Many insurance companies, as I understand it, will not pay for mental health treatment, even with group PPOs that are the best, Blue Cross, Blue Shield, whatever it is. They will not pay for mental health treatment. And you think about all the poor people that are suffering who really need not only the medication, but they need the therapy and everything that goes along with it. Why isn't the insurance company paying for that?
I think they doubt the effectiveness of a lot of those drugs. I think this is a different topic, but in my opinion, there's a lot of drugging that goes on in the name of mental health. It does nothing but create lifelong addicts. And
well, I mean, just take the most common drug that's used in the jails, I think, is probably Risperdal or Risperidone for whichever it's called for psychosis. If a person were to ask for the coverage of that medication to keep them on an even keel, I think most insurance companies will not approve it.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
And to me, that's wrong. I mean, mental illness is a real thing, and it should be treated.
And I've seen that stuff work. I've seen the before and the after. There's no question that was the difference.
Oh, yeah. And just like Larry, for a part of my career, I was a public defender, and we had a lot of mentally ill people that had been in a street. And it was night and day when they would get Risperidone in the county jail within a matter of, less than 30 days. It's like all of a sudden you're talking to somebody who's coherent, nice, low key. But before that was all over the lot, wanted to tell you they knew about who killed President Kennedy, and they knew about umpteen murders that had been committed by local police officers, and, just things that right away, you knew the person wasn't thinking right. And just the transformation was amazing. I had a client when I was a public defender like that.
No.
The poor woman was walking the streets literally with a giant bundle of papers, legal papers. But she carried like a bag lady carries all of her personal possessions. But these were all random legal papers and screeds that she had written and this, that, and the other. And she was so ill. And when she was finally taken into custody for missing one of her court dates and was put on risperidone, and I asked her as her public defender, I said, please do me a favor, try to take it. Don't cheek it and don't, cheat yourself. Try to take it and see if it doesn't help you. Within a month, it was a miracle. It was like talking to a regular person. She said, thank you so much, Mr. Mann. She went to live with her mom in South Georgia in Thomasville and is growing roses, the last I heard, with her mom.
Good for her. That's good.
And so, the point is,
I'm not saying people shouldn't be
but it's real medicine, and it really should be covered by the insurance, and it's not, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's a number I tried to get the audience. I don't have an exact number as to how many people were denied by United Healthcare and how many people died from those denials. Supposedly the number is very high, thousands. And I think some of the other facts are that United Healthcare has set up an AI system which was programmed to deny claims. You heard that?
Yes.
Yeah. So it was just deny, and then after a fight, they would accept some. That's what I understand. That's an opinion. That's what I gleaned. So and I think Mangione, the alleged murderer, was had back issues and had plied. I don't know. I get a different story there.
No, as opposed to true. Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
Supposedly his family's fairly well off, so I don't know why a well-off family couldn't afford his surgery or so. I don't know where that works in, but he had some history with the insurance company. So, do you think jury nullification, like? I think you gave me an example. You said in O.J. Simpson is somewhat of an example. You ever seen it happen in real life where it just says, yeah, he's guilty, but I don't care?
My very first jury trial in Tallahassee, Florida, in 1990 it was.
Yeah.
I had a guy who was charged with shoplifting for taking some cold medicine, some cough syrup for his child. He was caught. We had it on him. He'd walked past. They caught him with it. He didn't dispute it. We went to trial anyway, and the jury walked him.
Why'd you take it to trial? I mean, he would normally most defense attorneys would be like, we need a plea here. Let's take the plea or take the argument.
He wanted a trial. He thought he was justified because his child needed cough syrup, and the jury agreed. That's why they walked him. I remember when the verdict was announced, I looked over to my trial partner. Did she say not guilty? Because I was really confused by it, but because the evidence was clear, but they decided that he was going to be not guilty.
They just liked the guy, I guess. It's funny because part of me says, damn, our judicial system has broken down, and part of me restores my faith in humanity. Because I kind of like people to be able to judge for themselves rather than take. We had on the last podcast we did, it was a gentleman who was criminal defense expert. He just wrote a book on sort of the, one-sidedness of the state versus the lone defendant and how it's really set up to make the defendant fail. Or it's just not as fair. Juries want to believe a prosecutor, and when this guy's charged with trafficking cocaine, whether he's guilty or not, they kind of see it as their duty to make sure he's removed from the public and doesn't harm anybody. You think that's true? That like a jury will look at a defendant and want to side with the state?
Well, I think that, are you asking me if visuals play a role in what juries do? The answer is obviously yes. Okay.
Visuals like what he looks like.
What he looks like, yes.
What about just a natural inclination to say, we better make sure this, I don't know, like, I had a trafficking case, and I thought the jury had plenty of reasons to find us not guilty. And they found us guilty. Now, there's plenty of reasons to find. She sold it to an undercover FBI agent. It was a tough case. But when I went and talked to them afterwards, I just got this feeling like they were not going to listen to anything. Like, this lady needed to be removed.
Well, I remember a case I had in Florida. I represented I won't mention the name, but a young guy that was a well-known figure because at one point when he was in high school, he was the fastest man in Florida when he ran the 100-yard dash, and he could, what do they call it? A dead weight lift, something phenomenal. He was 6'4" and he weighed about 250, and he was built like a V. I mean, he was incredible. He ended up being a member of one of the NFL football teams for a period of time. But he was charged with a strong arm robbery of a man at a motel who was the owner of the motel. In front of it, the motel owner's wife, supposedly for trying to rob him of a chain, a gold chain that the man was wearing around his neck. And in the course of the trial, the owner of the motel really came across, I thought, poorly with the jury because he wanted to tell the jury about how he had a Lexus, how he had a Mercedes-Benz automobile.
Yeah.
He was Indian, from India, with a heavy Indian accent, but there was a certain degree of arrogance in his accent. I'm not sure if I would call it a British accent, but it just didn't go well, I thought, with the jury because of his personality. And the client was facing for a robbery charge like that, well in excess of 20 years. He was charged with strong arm robbery, and I think he was charged with an aggravated assault. The defendant was such a big guy that his fist, it reminds me of the famous picture of George Foreman's fist on, what was it, on the cover of Time magazine or something? It was so huge. This guy had a fist that was about the size of George Foreman's fist, okay? And he had punched him, supposedly before this chain came off, and broken a man's jaw in 4 places, okay? The jury came back and found the defendant guilty only of theft and acquitted him of the strong arm robbery and the aggravated assault. And I'm convinced to this day, they just didn't like the arrogance and the materiality or,
showing off it.
Yeah, trying to show that he'd made it because he had these fancy cars and so forth. And this is in the Florida Panhandle, and the maximum penalty was 5 years versus what would have been maybe 40.
Right.
And so that was a win. Unfortunately, the client still ended up going to prison for a while, but compared to what he could have gotten, that was a big win. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow.
So appearances, accents, attitudes, people that act like they're better than everybody else, that can be sensed by a jury very easily, I think.
Maybe if Luigi comes across as sympathetic, a victim, not like this angry guy looking to prove a point, but just kind of like, I had tried, I don't know, whatever his life story is and the frustrations.
I think that's how he's been every time he's appeared in court.
I saw him kind of get, I don't know, when the reporters came up, he started jumping around.
Well, at the beginning of the case, he was hollering, I think, right when he did his first appearance or something, and he looked agitated, and that was not a good look. And whether he was doing it for the cameras or he was really just mentally not right at that point. On the one hand, that plays into maybe a mental defense, but on the other hand, it looked like an angry guy.
Yeah.
And angry guys are scary guys, and so that's not good.
Right. Yeah, that's right. What kind of, we're about to run out of time, but what kind of jurors would you want? If you were going to pick a jury for this.
I want probably
Younger people, I would imagine.
almost certainly younger, definitely lower income. I don't want any other CEOs on that jury.
And no execs in their CEO, that's right. I think a lot of them are looking out for themselves now. Because some banking CEOs, hell, they all got some skeletons in the closet.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, no. Okay. I'm sorry, I didn't cut you off.
That's all right. I think that's really what I'd be looking for, just lower income and not necessarily poor, but just people who struggle, people who understand the struggle. I think that's who I'd want.
Yeah.
And you remember the famous quote from John Kennedy, right? All businessmen are SOBs, right? That's maybe not something that's going to cut it with a lot of people that are listening, but who are business people who work hard. But there is a perception that people that are higher ups in corporate America that, that they're unfeeling and they're distanced and, they spend their weekends at the country club and playing golf and this, that, and the other. And it's a different kind of a world. And you definitely don't want anybody that smacks of that. You want hardworking blue collar people.
Yeah.
Who maybe have had trouble with getting insurance coverage in the first place, let alone coverage for a specific illness.
And they'll be able to ask that question to potential jurors. Like, have you ever made an insurance claim? Was it denied? What did you have to do? Like,
Right.
just so we'll know when we do voir dire, fancy way of saying we ask jurors questions to see which ones we want to pick. We can get into all that. So any good attorney is going to just dissect every experience they've ever had with an insurance company, right?
Right. And if somebody made a claim and it was denied and they had to go through all the paperwork of appealing it, what was that like and how did that make you feel? That would be one of the questions you definitely want to ask during the voir dire, the jury selection process.
Right.
Because even if you got one in the box who went through that and that can permeate the rest of the box, people listening to what the person went through just to get approval for medication for their sick mother or whatever it was that they were doing. Okay.
Right.
People will be listening.
Yeah.
They will be.
Interesting. All right. Well, listen, gentlemen, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Well, thank you for having us.
Of course. Yes. And you brought up JFK. So that may be a topic for the next time. Have you been paying attention to the new,
what the RFK,
no, the JFK files over the exist.
well, there's some debate about whether or not they released anything that was significant.
No, there is. I think what I'm hearing is it's slanted more towards more CIA cover-up stuff. Definitely 2 shooters. But fascinating nonetheless. It's exciting stuff. And hopefully we'll be getting MLK's stuff, RFK, the dad's stuff. I don't know. Because it was interesting. Trump promised the first presidency that he'd reveal it. Then he stopped. Now he said, no, we're doing it.
Well, it's amazing to me that they can still hold back. There's still a portion of those documents that have not been released. And all the people that, spend their lives writing books about this, about the JFK assassination and so forth, they're angry because they feel like they have still been able, whether it's coming from the Bureau or it's coming from the CIA or both, okay, to hold back on some of the documents that are still in those files. And that's, what is it that they don't want revealed?
Well, it's so suspicious. I know this.
The suspicion.
And then you appoint Alan Dulles, the CIA director, who was against Kennedy, who Kennedy fired.
Right.
You appoint him to investigate this. It's like, come on,
Right.
people.
Right.
Anyway, we'll explore that some other day. But anyway, everybody, I hope you enjoyed Hines on Air. I think this is a fascinating topic. I would love to hear your opinion on what you think. For or against, what do you think and why? I'd love to hear it. So comment below, share this link. Please subscribe if you hadn't joined us, and we'll see you at the next Hines on Air. Hines on Air is for you. Remember to subscribe, like, and leave a review whenever you listen to podcasts. Your support helps us reach more people and continue sharing these incredible stories.